Winter is coming. That's the motto of House Stark, one of the great houses of Westeros in the Game of Thrones series. The meaning behind these words is one of warning and constant vigilance. The Starks, being the lords of the north, ensure they are always ready for the coming of winter, which hits their lands the hardest. Ultimately, winter will also unleash the devastation of the White Walkers, who bring death and destruction. I became a binge-watching fan of Game of Thrones, unaware of how prophetic it really was. Winter is coming, and it is bringing with it sickness, loss, and economic destruction. That strange feeling at the pit of our stomachs is grief, and the tightness in our chest is anxiety, which is anticipated grief. Lent, the current Christian season, has always been a time of grief for me, and autumn that leads us into winter. The 40 days of Lent is literally a time of quarantine, coming from the Italian word quarantina, meaning 40 days, referring to the length of time a ship had to wait offshore before entering port. This season of Lent has brought with it a deeper sense of meaning. Although in reality, this will be a longer Lent than anticipated. And so we find ourselves in this strange, emotionally displaced space as we sit in grief and anxiety. David Kessler, who worked with the grief expert Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, says, "We're feeling a number of different griefs. We feel the world has changed, and it has. We know this is temporary, but it just doesn't feel that way. Things will be different going forward, just as going to the airport has ever changed from what it was before September 11, 2001. We are now finding ourselves at another historic moment of adjustment, another moment where our perceptions of our world and our lives are rapidly shifting on their axes. The loss of normality, loss of connection, and the loss of life. The loss of financial security. These ever-present fears are becoming harder to push down and to deny. While we in Australia experience many devastating events such as drought, bushfire and floods, we often watch from afar catastrophes such as war and famine that occur in other parts of the world, detached by distance and an emotional separation that cannot really understand these lived experiences. We must go as far back as the Great Depression and 2 world wars to find the lucky country affected by one of the world's great catastrophes. Consequently, our contemporary national psyche is unused to the kind of global grief. Now, as a nation, we find ourselves mutually grieving with a world that is grieving. The work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was famous for naming 5 stages of grief. Some people discredit this understanding, but I find it a helpful guide as long as we understand that the stages are not linear in nature. Kessler applies the 5 stages of our experience over recent weeks. There is denial. The virus won't really affect us. Then there's anger. You're making me stay home and taking away all my activities. Then there's bargaining. Okay, if I social distance for 2 weeks, then everything will be all right and I can go back outside, okay? Then there's sadness. I'm afraid I'll lose my life, or people that I love might die. And then finally, the 5th stage comes acceptance. This is happening. I will have to figure out how to proceed from here. But Kessler helpfully adds a sixth stage to the grief equation, and that is the stage of meaning. Meaning questions are not why has this happened, or even worse, why has God done this? Such questions belong to the other four early stages. Meaning questions are more like, who am I in this new space? Or who am I becoming? Or perhaps, how can I be the fullest me in this new world? Or even, what would it mean to maintain a perspective of love and care for my brothers and sisters rather than one of individualism, division and suspicion? But this is a process mired in paradoxical complexities and ambiguities. Not an easy place to be. We need to be gentle with ourselves and with each other. We need to give ourselves time and space to work it through. Kerry and I have found it helpful to disengage from social media and from the 24/7 cycle of news in order to rediscover our back garden, to tend our plants, to plant a veggie patch, watch our beloved snuggling tawny frogmouths that we call hoot in the tree in the garden. These pursuits allow us to reflect, to process our feelings, and help us stay more in the moment, away from our chattering, fearful minds that hustle forward at 1,000 thoughts an hour. Self-care. What does that mean for you? You may wish to spend some time thinking and reflecting on this. I also encourage you to read today's Gospel reading, the story of the death of Lazarus, which provides us a helpful framework to reflect on these stages of grief and what it may mean for us. It is presented below in this context. Additionally, you may consider thinking and talking about how you are feeling, because when we name our feelings, they become our friends who dance with us rather than masters that control us. Winter is coming. However, if we intentionally choose love and compassion as we embark on this bewildering and extraordinary journey together, honouring ourselves and our fellow human travellers, we will have a far greater chance of minimising the virus's impacts. In the narrative of St. John's Gospel, the raising of Lazarus is a hint at the ultimate resurrection. But between this story and Easter Day, there is the betrayal, trial, and crucifixion of Jesus. This story comes to us in a timely way. Perhaps in this space we can only hint at resurrection. It seems a long way off. Perhaps even Easter will come late this year. My reflections this week have prompted me to remember a poem by May Sarton that Kerry and I have always found meaningful, and I'd like to share it with you. It's called The Autumn Sonnet. If I can let go, like trees let go, their leaves so casually, one by one, if I can come to know what they do know, that autumn is the release, the consummation, then fear of time and the uncertain fruit will not distemper the great lucid skies. This strangest autumn, mellow and acute. If I can take the dark with open eyes and call it seasonal, not harsh or strange, for love itself may need a time of sleep, and tree-like stand unmoved before the change, lose what I lose, to keep what I can keep, the strong roots still alive under the snow. Love will endure if I can let go. Easter may come late this year, but it will come.